Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Mr. Michael Lorusso.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm doing all right, man. So tell me a little bit about yourself and if you want, what you do professionally.
Well, professionally, I'm a video editor by trade, and I do mostly like plastic surgery videos, which is kind of gnarly, um, but also boring, just kind of corporate stuff for doctors, things like that. But then on the side, I do a podcast, and then I know you saw some of the videos I posted on Instagram. I'll do those. Just to break up the monotony while I'm in my editing program, do something for me, just something for fun. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Where did the fascination for editing come from? Like, how do you start editing and how does it lead to plastic surgery? Because I'm curious, is that like a video that they show people before plastic surgery? Like, this is you without tits. This is you with tits.
Well, I started editing at like 13 years old. I had a friend and we just used to film videos together. And his dad was really big into Macs before I even knew what like a Macintosh was. Everyone had a PC. This was way back when. And, he had like Final Cut Pro and like actual professional editing stuff. And so he would let us use that to edit our videos. So I learned like how to use the professional editing programs at a pretty young age. And then, I would make movies in high school and things like that. And then I went to film school. And then after film school, started getting like freelance video editing work. So really it was just something I did for fun and then made a profession out of it. And as for getting to the plastic surgery, I wonder that sometimes myself, like who wants to see these videos? Because they're like really graphic. I don't know why doctors would want to show these to patients beforehand. I feel like it would scare them away.
I
But
guess you have to let them know, but like, how graphic are we talking about here?
graphic.
Like, okay, so if a dude's on a motorcycle and he gets like half of his face burned off, do they show you that? And then they go like, this is what's going to look like. And they show you the whole process of getting new skin on your face.
Well, I do. For me, it's a lot of these people are in LA, so it's all cosmetic. So it's like facelifts, tummy tucks, and it's funny you mention it. Being like who would want to see that? Because when I first started doing that, I had just like accepted a job offer, and they just said they needed a lot of videos a week. They didn't specify what the business was. And I was like, well, cool. I haven't had like an ongoing client. I was just kind of getting little bits of freelance here and there. And then she's like, okay, I'm sending you the first video now. And the first video is like literally of a woman with the skin of her abdomen like peeled up over her head. And I'm like, how, like, luckily I have a strong stomach. I always kind of have. But I'm like, I mean, what if I didn't? And you just like sent that over to an editor who couldn't handle it. There was no warning at all. And now I've been doing it for like 5 years. So it's kind of funny.
I think that is probably like for her, it's so normalized that she was like, oh, this is just something I can send like a random poop or fart video. And next thing you know, like someone opens it up and starts like throwing up because they're looking at someone's like under their skin. Like I see that's
Yeah,
what
right.
has always scared me with surgery. I could never do with like once you see the organs and you actually seeing them like pulsate and stuff, it doesn't make me sick. But then I'm like in my head, I'm like, look how fragile that is. You know what I mean? Like it brings in a whole new perspective. And then like I always thought like during surgery, like I would never be able to do it because I would be trying to just mess around with so much of the shit that's inside there. I'm like, I can take apart something, but then
Yeah.
trying to put it back together is the giant issue. I'm like, why the
Yeah.
hell do we have an extra spleen out here?
Right. That would be me for sure too. I do that all the time. I'll take something apart thinking I'm gonna fix it, make matters worse. So I definitely would not make for a good surgeon. But yeah, it is pretty crazy. Some of the videos are pretty wild.
What's
And
the most wild one you've seen?
actually I would say recently, like I feel like anything with like the torso and stuff is pretty easy, and I do a lot of tummy tucks, but recently I started doing some facelifts, and I'm just like, how is that person still alive? Like I think that all the time when these doctors are cutting people open and like stretching their face across their skull. I'm like, how are we still alive? How is the human body able to just
We're just
heal
bags.
from this?
We're
We're
just
just bags of meat.
bags of blood walking around like little balloons. I got the realest, I guess. Ah, man, I've been trying to think of a way to incorporate this into one of these podcasts. I'm so happy this is the one. But when I was a kid, like, you would go to the nurse or whatever sick, like, and there was, when I was just laying in there, like, teacher would just be like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "I have a stomach ache." "Lie down." That was the answer to everything. Just lie down.
Yeah.
And so I would just be in there constantly, and she was just like, "Can you do me a favor and run this girl down to her go get her book bag?" It was just probably like 5th grade. I was like, "Sure." So she's covering her eye like this. I'm like, "All right, did she get hit in the face with something? What the hell's happening?" So and her name was Shakira. She was a
Oh.
very nice girl too. But we get back to her class. She grabs her book bag, and when she's grabbing her book bag, she's doing it one-handed. You know what I mean? And I'm like, "All right, like, this is going to take way much more time. I want you to use both hands." And she goes, "I don't want you to see what my eye's like right now." I'm like, "What do you got? Pink eye?" Like, I've shit and touched my finger on, hit my eye on accident, whatever. And she goes, "No." And she goes like this. And there's the little, like, one of the tubes behind her eye was
Oh
popped
my
out through her
God.
eyelid like a chihuahua, like a chihuahua. And I swear to God, I almost threw up. I went, "Huh." And then she was like, "See?" And she brought it back up. I was like, "Is that happened to everyone?" So ever since that moment in 5th grade, I have thought about that constantly when I look in the mirror, when I look at my eyes. I'm like, when I sneeze and this happens,
Yeah.
you bet your ass I'm running to a mirror and I'm checking for that. Because I'm like, if that's possible, she had to get surgery and everything to get that, like, pushed back in there. I'm like, could I just help you and poke it? Well, like, that
That's
stuff's,
so crazy.
it's great.
But
It's crazy.
did you say she was on her way to the nurse? Is that what you said?
She was like, she was going home. So she was
Oh,
already, so
okay. I thought, because for a second I thought she was just walking around, just covering it, and I'm like, that sounds like something a kid would do. Their eyes falling out of their skull, and they're like, I'll just cover it up till the school day's over.
read lines A to G.
Yeah.
Do your other eye. I can't do my other eye.
Yeah, it's crazy. It
But like,
it really is. The human body's pretty nuts. It's crazy what we can just go through and then just bounce back. It's wild.
I understand where people talk about getting plastic surgery, but what are your thoughts on that? Like, I feel like if technology gets to the point where it can be like a game where you can just be like, swipe left, swipe left. Oh, I like that nose. And you click it, and then, like, somehow, like, it gets, formed onto you. But like, with the amount of surgery, I get it. Cause I know there's a comedian, Steven Randolph. He, like, woke up one day and had tits.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, I understand that, like, getting rid of that and everything, but like, now it's like, if it gets too easy, it's going to be a problem too, because then you're going to have kids that are just going to be like, "I have a tummy," bam, and it's gone. It's like, hold on a second.
It's funny. As soon as you said he woke up and had tits, I've been doing these videos for so long that I've learned so many terms, and instantly I was like, "Oh, that's gynecomastia." And
Okay.
it's just funny how, like, I have no experience in the medical field, but I've been doing these forever, and I know all of these things are like if my mom's watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and they're doing a certain procedure, I'm like, "Oh, that's microneedling. Oh, that's like, oh, that's Vaser." And so she'll be like, "How do you know all this stuff?" I'm like, "This is what I do. I just
I
edit
went
these
to
videos
Harvard.
all the time." Yeah, right.
I went to
That's what
Harvard.
I wish I could say that. No, I just edit videos of people getting cut open.
It's funny because I want to drop so many YMH references right now because I know you'll get them, but I know so many people listening will be like, "What's YMH?" So for anybody out there that is listening, the way I found Michael here was through his video editing. He did a video of one of my favorite comedians, Tom Segura, and his wife, Christina Przitsky. Probably best relationship in comedy or any relationship at all, where you just talk about farts.
Oh
But
yeah, they're a power couple for
yeah,
sure.
the Your Mom's House podcast. Anybody can go look it up. If you don't like graphic content, I definitely would not look it up
Or
on this.
offensive content if you're
Yeah,
easily offended.
yeah, it's definitely not for children. But they teamed up with Dr. Drew. Anybody knows Dr. Drew? That brings me to my question I want to ask you. Have you ever came across anything like stuff Dr. Drew has said? Because I've heard things like somebody woke up and then their testicles had rescinded back into their body. I'm like, that takes surgery to get them brought back down. Have you had to do any of those videos?
um I definitely have had some videos like that, but not many. It's mostly like cosmetic stuff, but there have been some where like someone just developed a weird growth on their body that kept growing, had to be removed, things like that. There's another thing called similar to what you're saying, but for women, is vaginismus, where like the I don't know how graphic you want to get. It's not that graphic. It's medical, but the muscles in their vagina make it like so that nothing can enter inside. So like
Oh
sex is
yeah.
really painful. So I've done videos of that too.
Dr.
Yeah.
Drew literally just talked about that on his I love that podcast, man.
I
That
do
is the
too. I'm behind on it. I haven't listened in a couple weeks, but yeah,
like
I listen to that one a lot.
it beats perfect. You have people call in. It's called Dr. Drew After Dark for listeners out there. It's people call in and you get the occasional answers you want to ask your doctor, like, hey, my dick looks like this. Hey, my poop looks like
Yeah,
this. Hey, why is this happening when I do this? It's like maybe you should stop doing that.
right. Yeah, sometimes the most disgusting questions. People have no shame.
I try not to have shame. Like when I picked out my doctor, I got a list of 5 choices, and they all had what I would call resting bitch face, which was like
Yeah.
they just looked like they wanted to stab you. And you would think if you want a doctor that's going to probably put his hands on you, if you're a guy, you probably want to go with the female. No, no, no. I looked at the picture and there was only one dude out of the whole lineup, and he had a smiling face like this. And I was like, either he's a pedophile or he's a very nice guy. So I said, well, who's this guy about? And she goes, oh, he's the new doctor. He's really, really nice. He dressed up as a hot dog for our Halloween party. I was like, bam. I was like, okay. So then I met him and I was like, this is going to determine if you're going to be my doctor or not. And he looked at me, he goes, what? And I'm just like, stuck my hand out, shaked his hand. I was like, okay, you have soft hands. You're my doctor. And it was that simple. Like,
Soft hands.
that's what you want to do is you want to
It
get
doesn't matter if a man, is a pedophile and wears a hot dog costume. As long as he has soft hands, he makes for a good doctor.
That is a quote. I mean, I have people that are on my Twitter that just quote episodes, things I've said, and they like, this should all be written down into a philosophy book. I'm like, I wouldn't do that because you're not going to get any intelligence. When it comes to your podcast, though, like what exactly is your podcast? Plug it, and then also, what is it about?
Okay, so my podcast is the Backwoods Radio Show, and I guess it's technically like an audio drama, but it doesn't take itself seriously by any means. It's a fake radio show set in a town full of cannibals, mutants, monsters, other horror cliches.
Are we talking voice acting type stuff?
Oh yeah. It's fictional. There's a lot of sound effects, voice acting. Especially like the first season was almost entirely all just like fake radio show. And then as it went on and into like season 2, I started branching out where sometimes there's episodes that are almost just like a full length like radio play, where it's almost like a movie playing out in audio form. Lots of action, sound effects, scenes, things like that. So while the main format is like the fake radio show being held by this character Squatch Ronson, who's like the voice of the people in this town of cannibals. It's called Dog Snout County. Sometimes monsters break into the studio and things like that, and he's got to fight them off. Yeah. And
that sounds badass, dude. Like, because I'm really like, when I talk to Dungeons and Dragons podcasters, I talk to a few people from the Chad of Fallout 76 story. They do a lot of like audiobook stuff. That's the one type of podcast I'm trying to do. I'm very fascinated with voice acting. What voices do you do in this? Do you do any of them, or do you just do the story writing?
I actually kind of do everything, but not because I'm cocky, but because when I started this, I didn't have like anybody to do it with. I didn't have any friends that really wanted to act or anything. So I do the main guy, Squatch Ronson. And then his sidekick is Gator Gary, and he used to be an alligator wrestler. And while in the middle of wrestling an alligator, the nearby nuclear power plant exploded and fused him together with it. So he's half man, half alligator. And so yeah, he's like Squatch's sidekick. He does the weather on the podcast. There's Crimtar. He's a humanoid locust person who lives under the town. I do him. But then as it's gone on, I've made connections with other podcasters who have come on and done guest voices. Like I do fake commercials on the show for like deranged products and stuff like that. And so some of those people have come on and guested as like those characters. And some of them have even like come like pitched ideas to me, and they're like, "What if I think this would make a good commercial?" And I love collaborating, so I'm like, "Yeah, sure, write it up, you know, and you can record it, I'll edit it, and drop it in the episode." So yeah, there's a lot of variety in the podcast. It's a lot of fun, and people who love horror, who have a dark sense of humor, I think would enjoy it.
So Florida, huh?
No, not Florida.
You said Backwoods. I was like, everything you're explaining, I was like, that's Florida, but that's awesome.
It does sound like Florida. The only reason I say no is because it's funny. The people who listen always kind of joke about trying to figure out where Dog Snout County is, and I always say I'll never tell because, you know, if I tell them where it is, then the feds will crack down on all the cannibals there.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Just sometimes, you know, that really reminds me of the Grand Theft Auto game. If you watch the fourth one, I think the TV long enough, like when you're Nico Bellic, there's a knife commercial. And it's the best knife commercial that I'm pretty sure we've all seen at 2 o'clock in the morning, or when you're watching like a Randy Jackson CD being sold to you. We have 49 discs with 49 songs on each disc. You know what that is, each song in each disc, Jimmy? And then Jimmy's over off to the left like, I think that's a song a disc. That's a song and disc. But like this is woman's on there. She's selling a knife, and she's like, "Look at this knife for $12.99. Holy shit! Look at this knife. You can use this in a blizzard because sometimes you need to eat people." And I'm like,
"Yeah, exactly.
This is great."
That's pretty much the vein. The fake commercials in the podcast are pretty much in that vein. Yeah, and I try to spice it up with those. Do a bunch of different stuff. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of variety. So I feel like I'm a huge horror movie fan of all types, you know. So sometimes the podcast leans like body horror. Sometimes it's like cosmic horror, like H.P. Lovecraft. So, you know, I think it appeals to pretty much anybody who likes horror, regardless of the type of genre you like. You'll kind of pick up on Easter eggs and kind of little nods to classic horror films and things like that. But it also is its own little world, you know, with characters that come and go and reappear. And I try to keep it not like obsessed with continuity, but I try to keep it like it's a living world, you know. So things that happen one week might affect something the next week. It's not like a cartoon where everything just resets.
Kind of like Walking Dead, but more interesting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it carries on, and yeah, it's like a living, breathing world. And it's been a good outlet for me because I always, like I said, I used to love making movies and stuff, but that becomes so expensive, and I've had so many ideas, you know, that I never got to make. And because the podcast is so fucking batshit crazy, like anything goes with it. So I do come up with a lot of new ideas while I'm making it, but then there's times where I've had like little ideas that was like originally for a movie I came up with in high school, and I can like write it into the podcast and it can exist in some form, you know? So yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me.
What you got to give me one of these voices, man. I mean, I'm already like, if you want somebody to be an extra voice, I mean, I could do a radio voice. I can do, I did a podcast with a voice actor, and I can even show you his account. He does like exactly what you would think Wolverine would sound like. So me and him during a podcast, his name's Mark Philippe. But it's not his last name, and I know he's going to give me shit for it too. Philippe, I'm sorry, buddy. I love you out there. But he does a good Wolverine impression. I do a great Christopher Walken. So we did a scene where he was Wolverine and I was Christopher Walken, and we met in a bar and we had a conversation, just improv. And I would do Christopher Walken to you now, but since I started doing video, my facial expressions are fucking ridiculous when I do him, and then I can't snap out of it.
Yeah, right. No, I was actually going to say that, and then we got sidetracked. I'd love to have you on the podcast. I reach out to people all the time, especially because like I said, when I started out, I was doing all the voices, and when I do like a creature, something more like a monster, and then I add effects on it, you can't necessarily tell it's me, but I hated how a lot of the characters sounded similar, sounded like me. So I love adding variety, building up the cast. So anything you want to do, I'm always down. Whether you want to do a creature, whether even if you have an idea for a fake commercial or whatever, I'm always down. I love collaborating. I'm not precious about my artwork, especially with this podcast because it's so fucking stupid.
That's the best part about it, though, man. Is when you can have something that can, like, for me, mine's conversations with people. So whichever it goes, it goes. If someone wants to make it silly, it goes silly. If someone wants to make it deep and serious, it can go deep and serious. But like, you want to have fun with it too. Like, I know so many people that write out like, weeks and weeks for an episode, and it's like, is that fun? It doesn't seem like you're having very fun if you can't do anything.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I do a good job of making sure that it's like the quality is there. I don't like to, release an episode if I feel like it's not good. Even if I'm like nearing my deadline, there's been times where I'm like, fuck, I just got to rewrite this. It's just not, it's not fun enough, or, or these, there's not enough, it's too boring. I should add in a little action sequence or something.
Yeah, someone gets their hand stuck in a toaster or some shit.
Yeah, exactly. Or the main character, Squatch, he's got a lot of quote-unquote interns that are really just slaves that he keeps in dog crates in his cellar and tortures for his own amusement and things like that. So there's times where I'm like, I need to add some gore to this. So I'll have Squatch bring up an intern and just brutally murder him on mic, things like that. So I can add in a bunch of nasty sound effects and screams, if an episode feels like it's got too much dead air.
I feel like you were influenced a lot by Garbage Pail Kids, because a lot of these names you're popping off are the stuff I would think would be on a Garbage Pail Kid card.
What's funny is I really wasn't into Garbage Pail Kids much, but I was just talking with my friend about this the other day, where he was like, where do you come up with like the names for all these characters? And I'm like, I honestly feel like it's because I was such a big WWF fan in the 90s, so I almost kind of imagine a lot of these characters as wrestlers. And so I kind of come up with shticks for them and names that sound like they might be something that might be announced, during a wrestling match, during WrestleMania. And
in this corner, we got Alligator Allen, and in the other corner, we have Peter Pickled Pepper.
100%. And I'm not even into wrestling anymore, but like, man, I was obsessed with, before it was WWE, I was obsessed with WWF in the 90s, and I loved all the dark characters too, which makes sense. I loved Undertaker, Kane, Mankind. And I feel like that's been one of the biggest influences on like the character creation in the podcast.
You got to give me one of these voices now, man.
It's hard because, Squatch Ronson is just me with a slight Southern accent. That's it. Little gruffer.
Sounds like he smoked probably a Marlboro or two. I got it.
Yeah, so that's him. Gator Gary. I guess I can do Gator Gary, but a lot of him is in the effects. I make him sound like he's been mutated by radioactivity and stuff. But basically, he kind of has a voice like this. And it goes high and it goes low, like he's in agonizing pain at all times. And I usually add in heavy breathing in the background of him snorting, because I imagine that his respiratory system has been fused with that of an alligator, and it's not in the back. So he's kind of it's funny because he's kind of become a fan favorite. Not that I have some huge following, but the people who listen love Gator Gary, and he was just a throwaway character in episode 2. And I'm glad that I had made 2 episodes and I took like a year off because I just made them for fun. I didn't think anyone would listen. And then like a year later, a few people reached out and were like, why'd you stop doing this podcast? I'm like, oh shit, people are listening. Maybe I should pick it up again. And then it's good that I had taken that break because Gator Gary, I ended up bringing him back, and he became the weather correspondent. And then him and Squatch kind of became, like a dynamic duo, and then it kind of blossomed into like a bromance, and then Gator
Starsky
Gary,
and Hutch, man.
yeah, and then Gator Gary became this character that people love. And it's just funny how when you're working on something creative, you don't really think that far ahead. You don't know what characters people are going to like, and he only became a popular character because I had taken such a long break and was able to kind of look at feedback and be like, oh, people like this character. They kind of like this type of thing in the podcast. I should do more of that,
It's interesting too, because once you figure out what the character can be, you can decide what their voice is going to be. I mean, like for me, I would definitely want to abuse the Christopher Walken just because that's like one of my favorite ones. But I like a park ranger would be a good version to use his voice or something. But like, there's the scene, I don't know if you ever seen SpongeBob, where they're selling the chocolate bars.
Yeah.
And the grandmom that comes out in the wheelchair is like, what? What are they selling? They're selling chocolates. What? It's like, that whole thing. And then you can do, I mean, the only impression my buddy tells me is like, if you worked on it hard enough, you would be really good at it. And it's the one guy I can't fucking stand. And
who's that?
I mean, come on. What's the deal with airplane food? Is it airplane? Is it food? It's like, holy shit. Like, I can't stand that show. But, my Christopher Walken, like, I've talked it up so much, you kind of got to do it. Oh, my. This is tragic news. I'm out of milk in the fridge. I got to go to the store. It's that whole, like, you got to talk like you don't know where the hell you're going. The train is off.
I feel like your walk-in voice. I don't know why. I just thought it would be perfect for a deranged mortician in the podcast.
I lost my staple in a body. One of these, I don't know where to go.
Like he'd offer you a discount at the funeral if you let him diddle your grandmother's corpse. That'd be the type of character he is.
If she puts out for a funnel cake, like something like that, yeah. But like that's what's so interesting about it too, because like sometimes that's like a lot of what's really important in podcasting too, is having that type of freedom. But it's that camaraderie. You got to make sure you bond with some people too. I mean, I talk to people. Yeah. Hundreds of them a day. I mean, not maybe a day, but hundreds of them, so far that I've done this podcast. And there you could tell when there's a connection. You can tell when there's not. Sometimes it's hard to get a loose flowing thing, but it usually opens up. And it's like I come across like mine does run off guests a little bit. But it's really what I thought was interesting about doing like a self podcast, because it's only reliant on you. But then it can get boring sometimes too, because you're doing so much of it alone. It's like, I wish I had some people to throw in to help out. And it's like,
Yeah, there's definitely positives and negatives to that. Cause like, that's why I started out doing the podcast. Cause I always liked, like I said, making movies, things like that. And it was just getting hard to get my friends to schedule, to get together, to do stuff. I'm like, I need to just do something that I can just do by myself. I don't need any props or anything like that. Won't cost me anything. So I started doing the podcast. And the good thing about doing it alone is you don't have to depend on anybody if you have a deadline, stuff like that. You can kind of get stuff done. But it is a lot more boring. But then bringing in other people to do guest voices, or if I bring them in to do a fake commercial for the podcast, everybody's been pretty good, but there have been times where, something happens with them and they're unable to like record their part. And then I have to, come up with a new segment, put it in that episode, and then I'll, use the one that they recorded when they're able to do it, put it in a later episode. So yeah, the good thing about working with other people is it does make it more fun, but working by yourself does make it easier to, churn out more content. But I've just learned that when I do want to bring other people in to, do a guest voice and stuff, I'll kind of plan to have them in an episode that's like not going to drop for 2 months, say. Cause I do the podcast twice a month. So 2 main episodes a month, and then I try and do a mini-sode on every off week, but sometimes I skip one. So yeah, if I'm on episode 1 and I know I want to bring someone in to do a voice, a lot of times I'll save them, for like episode 3, so they have plenty of time to record it, get it back to me, all of that.
That's good. I like that. I've been trying to had some buddies I've been trying to get started podcasts. I've started so many just from people that started doing it by themselves. I was like, I've met somebody that's kind of similar to you. Let me pair you up with them and seeing it, because I think that's what's needed. I mean, much like me and you enjoy your Mom's House podcast or Dr. Drew, or maybe Christina's podcast, wife, where my mom's at. Yeah. That's what and then like I like all of them. Joe Rogan, Bert Kreischer's podcast, just so many of them out there, because they're all fun. And like, what's the fun part about your Mom's House podcast is like, it's just bullshit from like, this is the part of the episode where all my listeners are going to kind of tone out because they're not going to know any of these references, but taking videos off TikTok, finding those, doing the just feathering it, the ones that me and you understand, those little inside jokes and stuff. Cause half of the stuff you go out there and you can't say Suwoo out loud in public, cause that's a gang thing, but that's like a funny joke. Podcast, you know what I mean?
That's especially your Mom's House is like, everything's just like one big inside joke, but for thousands of people. Yeah. That one has a really different vibe. Because it really does feel like, and I don't mean to sound like naive or childish, but it does feel like we're a part of it. You know what I mean?
He's highlighting Garth Brooks and his insanity.
Tom Segura, that's what's cool is I've just, like I said, because I do this boring corporate video editing. So just for fun, like the first time I ever did it, I took a couple video clips that Tom had, showcased, and I cut them into movies, and I just posted them on Instagram. This was like a year ago, and he shared those two. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even think he would see this. I was just making it to break up the monotony of my job. And then he shared it. And then that was like fucking awesome. I was like shaking. I was so excited.
His audience, though, he attracts some funky characters, man. It was his birthday the other day. Shout out there, Tommy Buns. Happy birthday. It wasn't late. But somebody commented on his stuff. And like, it's where you start looking at, like when you start getting popular, you start reading people's comments. There's always that weird one. Like he had a TikTok that commented and was like straight up, hey, Tom, I wished you happy birthday, hoping that you would wish me a happy birthday on mine, and you didn't. And I'm really upset. And just started going off in a paragraph. And I commented like, are you okay? And then did a happy face emoji. And then he commented and he was like, oh, screw you and your podcast. And just started going off. And I'm like, bro, chill out. Like I was just like, okay. And then he gave me the best comeback I've ever heard. He goes, I was like, I was just joking. He goes, just like you're joking to yourself that your podcast will take off after 400 episodes. I laughed so fucking hard. Yeah. I was just like, dude, and I liked it. And I was like, that's good as shit, dude. That was funny. But I was like, I hope you have a good one, brother. Then episode 401, I got Brant Tobler on my podcast. So I was like,
it's awesome. Yeah. You know what? That does seem to be the key is just consistently releasing content. I feel like season 1, I was just doing 2 episodes a month. And then in season 2, I started doing the mini-sodes on off weeks. And just by getting, more content out consistently, I was seeing my numbers get a little higher in the charts. I got pretty high up like a couple times. I'm not always high. I don't expect to be, but there was like 2 times I got in like the top 20 of comedy fiction. And I was like, that's just because I'm like, bombarding the market with content, so
I know how that is, dude. I mean, I put up an episode every single day. I always tell people it's not about catching up. It's about just finding one you like that you want to just listen to and see if it's interesting. I mean, because I just produce so much of it, but it's conversations with people. So it's like I was doing seasons for a while. Each season was 100 episodes. And then it was like, I got to stop this bullshit because I'll be on season 10,000 or something. I'm like, just do it like Joe Rogan does it, where it's just numbers.
Yeah, exactly. With that, the only hard part with doing like my podcast, because it is like, more like an audio drama. There's so much sound effects and stuff. I wish I could release even more content, but it's like I have to like create a soundscape. I have to edit these scenes, you know.
A lot more work gets put into that than mine. Mine's just literally I'll edit out if a thing gets cut or if someone says something and they want it cut out. But a lot of it's
Right.
just raw and up there.
Yeah, so that's like the one thing is you know, I would like to get to a point where I'm able to kind of bank more episodes so I can kind of keep it going, you know, all year round. But the fact of the matter is right now, basically I do like 10 episodes a season. This season I took a little break during all this quarantine stuff because there was just too much going on. But now I'm getting back into it, and so I'll extend this season probably to 13. And then after that, I'll probably take just like 2 months off. I try not to take too long off, you know, for a hiatus because of that, because I feel like once you're off the air, people forget about you, you know. So doing it the way you do it is perfect. You know, people don't have a chance to, you know, there's so many podcasts out there. If one goes off the air for a while, you end up filling that void with something else, you know. So
It's
yeah.
it's weird too because like even with this one, like if I'm putting out an episode a day though, it's like you come across some strange people in the world too. Some people are like, you know, there's the yeah, obviously you're gonna get the ones that just want attention. You guys will get the ones that just want to promote something, and it's a different conversation every time. I like to see where it goes. I mean, obviously it's mostly goes pretty well when someone else is a podcaster because they know how it works. But it's
Yeah.
also cool to just to hear. I mean, I've met so many people beneficial through this from you know, people that own hot sauce companies like my sponsor, Two Angry Cats, Josh Williams, but like David from Way Hot Hot Sauce. They're just good guys. Like they're just regular people out in this world. They kind of let you know that not the whole entire world is filled with these TikToks. You know what I mean? Like it's nice to
Yeah.
know that there are some good people out there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because you know, with my podcast, there's a couple other guys that do like comedy horror podcasts similar to mine, and like they just reached out and were like, "Hey, let's collaborate, let's do crossover," you know, things like that, and it's been a lot of fun. You know, it's been really cool, and you know, I went to I like I said, I went to film school, and I hated fucking working with people because the art school kids are just they're just so bad. They've got such fucking big heads, and like they all wanted to be in control, you know. They all wanted to be the director. You couldn't work together in a group to make a movie because everybody wanted it to be theirs. And I just hated it. And I just thought artistic people sucked and I'd never find good people to collaborate with. And now that I've been doing this podcast, I'm like, oh man, you know, I've met awesome people that like I look forward to working with. You know, I like bringing them into the podcast. It's been really cool. And Instagram has been great for that, meeting people. You know,
The hashtag communities are like the best way to go. You could look up a certain
yeah,
hashtag, follow it, and then next thing you know, I came across you through hashtag Your Mom's House podcast.
yeah,
Next thing you know, I'm watching a video. It was either the video with the arrow or it was a video with Garth and or whatever, and you photoshopped something in it. But I was laughing so fucking
yeah,
hard, and I liked it. And then I clicked on your profile, and I was like, wait a minute, this guy's got a lot of goodies on here.
yeah. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of funny how I've learned these weird ways of almost inadvertently marketing myself through Instagram, because I feel like I was never good at Twitter, never good at Facebook, but Instagram, because it's so visual, and I do, you know, Photoshop and I do videos, it's been like a good outlet for advertising the podcast. And I used to just kind of make promos for the podcast, put them out there, and then I just kind of learned, like after Tom Segura shared a couple of my things, and I ended up gaining a lot of followers on Instagram. And then those people then went on to, you know, check out the podcast. I'm like, oh, if you just make funny shit that will appeal to people, they'll like your sensibility and then check out your podcast, you know? So it's funny how, like this past week when Tom Segura shared my video, ended up gaining like 100 listeners. And it's like, and that wasn't even through something I actually made for the podcast. It's just that I made a fucked up video and they were like, oh, this guy's got the same sense of humor as me. Let me check out his podcast. Yeah. So that's been cool too.
I like it because it's a good way to find people, and also at the same time, it's really kind of strange too because Instagram has these like communities. Like I've talked to people in the ice cream community. I've talked to pizza
Ice
people.
cream
Dude,
community.
yeah, that's a weird one for you. Let me tell you something. But I mean, nice guys I've met through there, but it's weird because I've gone from the hot sauce community to the ice cream community, to the pizza yolos like Mike. He's known as Pizza in the Sack. Like, he just makes pizza, dude.
In the sack.
Like, but that's what they're called, is pizza yolos. So I've met like 3 of those: Edgar, Mike, and Scott. I'll give them a little shout. But like, they're such cool guys. All they want to do is talk about pizza and shoot topics back and forth. I'm like, hang on a second. What does everybody stand on Domino's? And everyone's like, it's okay. I'm like, it's okay. Oregano on the crust, motherfucker. That's how we roll. And then there, like, one dude comes out in the background and goes, Little Caesars. I'm like, fuck that hot and ready bullshit. That's plastic pizza. Come on now. But like, those types of conversations, those types of people I've met, and they're just amazing people, man. And I think that's like, it shows a benefit too. But what is so difficult about Instagram is the fact is, if you're not putting up a picture that's visual or anything that is super appealing to someone's eyes, you don't get a like, and they don't look into it anymore. They're just swiping and they see it. Double tap, swipe, double tap. Like, people will put up videos of like a dude going, hi, my name's John, and we're going to sell you furniture. Not just any type of furniture. This will stick splinters straight in your ass. You won't be able to hear that because you just see this guy like talking, and there's no sound coming out because you didn't tap the video to hear the sound.
Right. Yeah. That is the thing with Instagram. I could see other people having trouble with that because it's so visual. For me, I think that's why it's worked for me, because I also draw a lot of artwork for the podcast too, and it's really gross and grotesque. So people who like horror and stuff see the promo for the next episode of the podcast, and if they haven't listened, they'll be like, oh, what's this? What's this disgusting creature I'm seeing? Then they see it's from a podcast, they check it out. And that's why like Twitter never worked for me, because I could just never figure out how to put out 2 sentences that got someone's attention, But Instagram, I was able to use like basically my professional skills of video editing and stuff, and, using that to grab people's attention. But that is true. If you're not, if you're not into like graphic design and stuff, and you're trying to promote something on Instagram, you might have trouble because, you gotta put stuff out there that's eye catching,
Yeah, like people that are entrepreneurs are trying to ship people products and stuff. That's how they just follow a bunch of people, then unfollow them. But like podcasters have to try and like go and find other hashtags to pull out other guests and do all this type of stuff. I'm just like, I'll just get guests and let them tell their friends about it and see if they had a good time. And that's how I've just eventually grown the following up a little bit. But I mean, it's nothing like I plan on trying to make, I guess, a life living off of, like most people out there want to talk about, like, I want this to be my dream job. I'm like, I do too. But, facts of life are, it's probably ain't going to fucking happen.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is the dream. I would just be happy with, I'd love to get like as my audience grows, get like a little Patreon going. And I'm not saying, and I don't expect to ever make enough to make a living from it, but I work, so one job I do is video editing, and I do have a bunch of clients, but I consider it, one job. And then I sell stuff on eBay. And I would love if eBay's more fun. It's more leisurely. I get to do it when I want. When I just used to do that, I had more time for creative projects. So I would just love if I could get like a Patreon going that made just a little bit, to make up for, allow me to say quit some of the editing work. That would be enough for me, where I could just put more time into the podcast. But either way, I just do it for the love of it. So I've been doing it for a year and a half, 2 years. Roughly. So, and I haven't made a dime off it, but I keep churning it out because I just love doing it, but of course, if you could make money from it eventually, that would be great.
I'm just sitting here literally thinking of characters right now. You got me stuck on these. The one you said earlier, I got to
Dude, any characters you have?
Hang on.
Throw my way.
The one you said earlier, the Gator guy one. I already
Gator
Gary. I know I didn't want to mistake it, but he sounds exactly like a comedian that I've heard on the episode of the Crab Feast, because I love the Honeydew with Ryan Sickler.
I do too.
I've had Steve Simone on. I've had Brant Tober on. I'm getting Josh Adam Myers on. He's actually tonight.
Oh, nice.
Tonight. Shout out to Josh. Your episode will probably drop before this. But
look at you. You're the how big you're getting. You're the next Joe Rogan.
Oh God, I don't want that.
No, it is really cool though. Dude.
They're all very they're normal is what I'm saying. They're very,
Yeah.
you surprisingly, if you message out to like Tom Segura or somebody, if you know it happens enough, they come across it and they're like, yes, what's up, dude? That's
Comedians are a lot more down to earth for sure, so that is cool. But it just shows that, look, you've put out what, like 400 episodes? For how many
I'm
episodes you put out?
400 and today was 11.
Okay, so over 400 episodes, and now you're starting to get these bigger names on it because you just put in the work and kept at it. A lot of people, after say 20 episodes, they'd be like, it's not going anywhere. I'm just going to stop, or they'd take long breaks. But then that goes back to what you were saying, is I think a lot of people expect to like make a living off of this, but you have to be willing to just kind of keep doing it and eat shit. Like, you have to do it because you like doing it,
Yeah, you'll have your good
And
episodes and your bad episodes, but I think many people stop when they just either they feel like it gets boring or nobody's listening. I'm like, there's
yeah,
always somebody listening, and there's always going to be somebody like me. The Crab Feast was the podcast I listened to the most out of all of them. That's kind of what the Honeydew is now, but it was with Jay
yeah,
Larson. I found that out so late after it was over, and then I've been re-listening to them all. And that's like the only one I ever listened to because
hmm
that's what you'll come across. It's out there now. Just let it stay out there. But so many podcasters stop because life gets in the way, which is understandable. But it's like
yeah, for sure.
they give up mostly. It's like, well, keep on keeping at it.
Well, that's the thing, is I almost feel like, um, if you just do something because you love it and you just keep doing it, the longer you do it, the higher the chance it is that people are gonna stumble across it. And that, I've seen that with the podcast. It's the first season I would get like 5 downloads an episode, and I was like excited anybody was listening. And now in season 2, I get about 115 downloads an episode, which is, it's still small, but way more than I ever expected to get. And then like now I've just seen kind of another little surge. So I might see those numbers go up even more. And this was just something I was doing for fun, you know, even when I thought, just 5 people were listening and that was going to be it, so you got to just keep at it.
It's so weird too when you see like someone tweets out, like someone tweeted the other day an episode I had with Steve Simone and was like, this is what I needed right now. Thank you so much. And I was just like, wow, like it's a weird feeling. And then also like I had someone tweet at me like a shirt of my podcast that they were wearing. And I'm not trying to
Yeah.
gloat here, but it's like, it slaps you in the face. Like, I don't even have my own fucking merch. How did you
Yeah.
get one? Like,
Right. Yeah, that's always fucking cool, when someone, like, I had one guy, he sent me a message, and he was a mommy too. Um
kept
he
them high and tight.
Yeah, it's funny, his review on my podcast on iTunes, the title just says "Home Here Now." And then below that, it's like, "Love this podcast." And I was like, "Oh, nice, a mommy."
Dude, half the time I want to scream at Tom Segura and Christina P. Like, what do you? That's not what he's saying. This is what he's like. It's so obvious,
I know.
but they're like, "Is it homie on out?" I'm like, "Why the fuck would it be homie on out?"
Yeah, I've had those times. Yeah.
I messaged Robert Paul Champagne and got a response back from him. He was just like, "Okay, that sounds like fun," and I'm like, "Well, let's do it." And he's like, "Sounds like fun," and I'm like, "All right, are you just auto spawn? Like, do I have to go to your house right now?"
Oh, it would be great to get him on your podcast, but he wouldn't be able to figure out how to use the technology. You'd have to send Josh Potter down there to do it for him.
Dude, that relationship goes so far back and forth, and then we had the feathering guy, and we lost him, and then now
Fed smoker.
we're finding the new ones. The Fed smoker one, I feel like I've seen a guy like that in public, but I think I can
sure.
I think I can land piss spots.
Yeah, piss spots. You could totally land piss spots. That would be perfect. That would be so good.
That's like I love it when they were talking about the McDonald's sponsorship, and then like it was gone after the Terry video, and I was like, that was so perfect because you could tell they suck, but they were just shitting on McDonald's the whole time, and then we got sponsored by a steakhouse, and yeah, they have okay meat, I guess, not to shit on them, but that was funny. And then I love not only the mixes that the guests, like not the guests, but the people send in, especially with Saka Souffle, where they had like the songs at the ending is just perfect. Like the beats that go together. I was like, damn, I was like, this is what it's all about. It's not about getting famous, but it's about having people like this that listen, that just love it so much.
Yeah, it's, your mom's house, like I was saying earlier, is like one of the best examples of a podcast where the audience really is a part of it. They're always showcasing stuff that fans make, things like that. Fans send stuff in. That's how they get a lot of their material. And I realized I got sidetracked when we were talking about that mommy that left me a review, and you were talking about, a listener who was wearing your merch. This guy, he reached out to me, sent me a message, and he had gotten a bunch of stickers printed with like the podcast logo on it. And he was like, hey, I hope I'm not stepping over the line here, but I got a bunch of these stickers made and I was going to put them around town to advertise your podcast. I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, of course I don't fucking mind. Like, that's awesome that you just took it upon yourself that, you liked the podcast and wanted to help promote it and went and did this, so that's been awesome.
I live in a beach town, so like the boardwalk gets packed with a lot of tourists. We get like thousands and thousands of people coming from like New York, New Jersey, whatever, Virginia, all coming down here. And I was like, what do I want? Stickers or do I want business cards? I was like, I'm trying to get guests, so let's do business cards. So I grabbed like 8 boxes of like thousands of business cards. I just went on the boardwalk, and after trying to hand them out to people, I was like, fuck this. I just took both stacks and flicked them like that in my hand, so they all shot out everywhere.
Someone will pick them up. That's the way to do it.
There's a public service worker out there like you, sick son of a bitch.
Yeah. That's got to be one of the best parts, though, doing the podcast is the fans, honestly. Like, it's been really cool. It would actually, I almost think it wouldn't be as fun to be like so big that you couldn't engage with your fans,
Joe Rogan became like that, man. I mean,
it's like he can't even engage. How can he? He's the biggest fucking media anything.
I loved his podcast, and it was so much fun having his friends on and stuff. But you see now, like, unless his friends are promoting something, he's always getting like guests that he thinks people want to see. I've seen his lineup. I'm like, you don't want to actually have that person on. You're just going because that person's popular right now. You're just doing it because, the listeners are suggesting things and you got to pick up that. I'm like, you lost your thing. I was like, the best part was doing sober Octobers and just doing stuff where you're just shooting the shit with your friends. But like, people like, you turn it to an interview, and it was more of a conversation. Like, that's how I structured mine. Was the beginning is introducing you, and then we just go from there. And I think that's more comfortable because it's basically giving people the reason to be the fly on the wall and listen to the pod.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think there's like a perfect level of popularity where you're not so popular that you're like that you can't engage with your fans, but then popular enough that you have a fan base that you can, engage with. And it makes it so much more fun than, just doing it alone.
And I really appreciate you, Michael, for coming out and doing the podcast, man. I was honestly, when I messaged you, I was not expecting a response back. I was like, this guy's too busy morphing Garth Brooks onto things.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. First I was like, my initial feeling was to be like, I don't know if I want to do an interview. I'm so used to just doing a podcast in my fictional world. I'm like, I feel like I wouldn't be good on a podcast, but I'm like, well, I should probably, do it so I can kind of dip my toes into more traditional podcasting, if I want to call myself a podcaster.
I wouldn't call this one traditional in any sense.
At least in format.
But I really appreciate you coming out and doing the podcast. I want you to plug your show here too, just so people can find it. I'll link it up and everything, your profile as well. See your epic Garth Brooks morphs and videos.
Yeah, you can see my meme videos or, all the podcast stuff on Instagram. That's pretty much the only social media I use, at Squatch Ronson. And the podcast is the Backwoods Radio Show, and that's on pretty much every podcast platform: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and then a bunch of small ones too. I've tried to kind of get it everywhere. And yeah, if you like horror and you have a fucked up sense of humor, dark sense of humor, I think you'll enjoy the podcast. It's a lot of fun.
I already got the character I want.
What's your character?
The park ranger, and his name is Low Libido Larry.
Low Libido Larry. What's his voice?
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing?
You know, he's got like that low sense of like not really masculine voice since his low libido.
Well, he has to have some disgusting shtick, though, if he's going to be in a town full of cannibals. So maybe he goes around cutting off other guys' penises because he has such a low libido.
I was going to say just chop off the testicles.
Okay. Either way, we're on the same page. We're in the
Put
same
it on
ball.
Put it on a meat grinder, or you can make him sound
we're
like
in the same ballpark.
Sound like Captain Sulu. Oh my.
Yeah. Every character's got to be disgusting in some sort. You know, it's almost like a love letter to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know.
Best episode of the Your Mom's House podcast with Craig Ferguson. I've been re-listening to that all day today. He says he's swimming in a river of shit and he's not even living in the Shawshank Redemption. That was the funniest thing.
The things that guy says are so fucking good.
It's the accent, dude. I'm telling you.
Yeah, exactly. It makes everything better.
Well, that's been an episode Out of the Blank podcast, and thank you so much for listening. And check out his awesome content. Great guy. And you know, maybe you'll see somebody on there. Probably not. I don't know. I'm not very
You'll be on there.
All right.
Yeah, my word. You'll be on there, man.
Have a good one, guys.